Hi everyone and welcome back to Easeful Vitality. This is week 9 and we're diving into sense organ care. What we're going to talk about is the number 2 cause of disease, disrespecting our senses. Our senses are delicate instruments able to discriminate between delight and damage. Pay very close attention to what you taste, see, hear, feel and smell. What delights and nurtures your senses? Tune into your senses to find out. Your senses will tell you when they've had enough. Your job is to pay attention and respond appropriately. When you make inappropriate choices repetitively, you confuse or damage your senses. Confusion blocks the flow of consciousness. Damage destroys consciousness. Making decisions from an unconscious place will destroy you over time. This is the teaching. Be attentive to your body. Detect when music is too aggressive, food too processed, or your eyes too tired to read the screen. Disrespect your senses and you cause disease in your body, mind, your relationships, and your spiritual life. Respect the wisdom and sensitivity of your senses. So I shared that so you understand how sense organ care is part of the 10 habits. Your senses are how you perceive the world, and we know that we perceive through our eyes, ears, skin, taste, smell. But on some level we forget these are instruments and they are incredibly sensitive. And that sensitivity is how we learn what we want to connect with, merge with our consciousness. And yet, we often find we disregard our senses, too tired, yet still reading or watching something. Our tongue might tell us the food doesn't taste that good, but we swallow it anyway. The noise in the background that eventually drives us nuts. So we're going to pay attention to this on this path to prevent disease through learning, through experience. Keeping senses super clear and sharp and syncing up with the seasons, earth cycle and times of life. We want to live more and more through our senses, and in that way we wake up a little bit, connecting more with our animal self. So let's have a look at how we do this, and how we can attune our senses and up-level our self-care as we age. In Ayurveda, there's an oil for every orifice, and you have the chart in your Master Habits Guide. So you'll see, starting at the top, they talk about oiling the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the nostrils, the skin, and even for our reproductive areas. Let's look first at the mouth, and we'll start with the tongue. So each organ corresponds to one of 5 elements. The tongue corresponds to the water element. If you have a dry tongue, you can't taste very well. Ears are ether, so if you put your hands over your ears and take out that space element, you can't hear. Eyes are fire. If you're in the dark and no light from the sun, you can't see. Skin is air, and smell is earth, said to be the oldest sense, the most primitive sense, the sense that has the most memory. We can recognise smells from our earliest memories as opposed to sight or sounds. So we want to scrape our tongues each morning. A stainless steel one suits all doshas. Or you can simply use a spoon, although some may find this can stimulate the gag reflex. You want to do this every single morning before you drink water. So you wake up, pee, and scrape your tongue. This is where these tiny little habits come in. The trigger, out of bed. Time to pee, scrape my tongue, then drink my water. You want to habit stack that tongue scraping. The reasons are to help take stock of your health, to remove bacteria from your mouth, prevents bad breath, prevents oral decay, can detox your mouth, stimulates digestion and elimination, help crave healthy foods, and we can taste more accurately. Even if you're just dealing with bad breath, you know about it or you've been told that you have it. Craving foods that are not good for us. Often if the tongue's not clear, it's got a coating on it, we'll have cravings more in tune with the armour than what the deeper tissue of our body actually wants. So the tongue is a map of the organ system of the body. The heart, the lungs, stomach, intestines, liver, kidneys, pancreas, it's all laid out on a map. There's a tongue map in your resources and a blank tongue chart that you might like to print so you can track what's going on. So what are we looking for? The different patterns, patches, gunk in a circle, and where it corresponds to an organ. For example, white goop over the intestine area, then you know you have armour in the digestive tract. And now you are aware of it and you scrape it off. And it will stimulate the digestion and elimination through the energy lines, the nadis that correspond the tongue to the corresponding part of the organ. As you're scraping, you're stimulating the pathway. And so the other end of that nadi gets some attention, gets a boost, and the action of scraping, which is stimulating. Other things you want to look out for on our tongues. Are there patches at the back on one or both sides? These may correspond with the kidneys that are stressed out, so you might want to look after them. For adrenal fatigue, drinking too much coffee, or relying too much on sugar or stimulants or alcohol. It might be a red or a dark brown patch. It's the kidney telling you to pay attention. Malabsorption is another really common thing you can see on your tongue. Malabsorption will show up as teeth marks on the sides of the tongue, like a scalloped edge instead of a smooth seashell edge. Also, look for cracks in your tongue. These can be a sign that vata is out of balance, especially if there are multiple cracks. And so look at your stress levels. Make sure you're eating meals regularly at the same time every day. Do you need more sleep? Perhaps more time for sitting in silence? Or a more vata pacifying diet and lifestyle? All about rhythm and regularity. Other things to look out for are if the tongue shakes. You try to hold it still, but it's moving really quickly. That's a sign that there's excess movement in the nervous system, which can become anxiety, as well as a sign of a vata imbalance. Look at too much caffeine. You might have excess movement in the nerves due to too many stimulants. If there's froth around the front and sides of the mouth, this is a sign that there's kapha in the lungs, which is mucus, the heaviness and the dampness. So perhaps a ginger tea, if you're seeing that. If your tongue looks really red and dry and there's cracks, that's a sign of a pitta imbalance. There's too much heat and not enough kapha or moisture. It's really sensitive with mouth ulcers. Kapha imbalance is where the tongue usually is pale or coated and it's more watery than the others. Vata looks dried out and pitta looks inflamed. The last thing I want to mention is if there's a deep crack down the centre of the tongue, that is corresponding to the spine. So the very front of the tongue is the crown of the head, and at the very back of the tongue is the tailbone. Say there's a crack down the bottom of the heart, a little bit more than a third back, and notice what is going on in that part of your spine. So you might want to put one hand on your heart and the other on the back where the heart corresponds, and check if that's where you're holding any tension or stiffness, if there's a vertebrae out, because the tongue will reflect that too. This is great to teach our kids so that we can use this as a measurement of how our health is going. How much you're scraping off your tongue in the morning can show you how much armour you have. Perhaps the digestion is backed up, you didn't have an early lighter dinner, or you're in a detox phase, maybe overloaded in the gut. These are all signs when you scrape that thick layer of goop that you have armour. You may want to drink some ginger tea and follow the habits to see if you can get back into rhythm and stop generating armour. There's a recipe on the website. So what I want you to do this week is to print off the tongue chart and complete a tongue each day for what you notice on your tongue, exactly what you're seeing. Use the tongue maps, both the organs and the imbalances, to help you discover exactly what's going on. Can you see how this ties in with the other habits? Well, you will. You will see how early lighter dinner and a healthy eating guidelines alters what you see with your tongue analysis. And even meditation as the nervous system calms so the tongue stops tremoring. It's cool, hey? So this can be used as an accountability tool, very useful to reflect how you're doing overall with your habit changes. So one of the other practices we can do for our oral care is to oil pull. This is usually done in the morning on an empty stomach, but that said, you can really do it any time if you haven't eaten within an hour, otherwise it might make you nauseous. This can seem really bizarre at first because most of us are not used to having oil in our mouths. Basically, you put in about a tablespoon of oil in your mouth, coconut or sesame oil. Any cold pressed organic oil is going to do the job. And you simply swish that oil through and around your mouth for 20 minutes while you're busy doing something else. Coconut oil will melt if it's solidified in the cooler temperature. You can chomp on it until it liquefies if you like, but don't swallow. This can gross some people out, so just whatever works for you. If it's sesame oil, use the untoasted variety. Once you're finished, spit it into the rubbish bin or out on the grass. The idea is to keep the oil out of the plumbing. So why do we do this? Oil pulling can start to pull some of the armour out of the other senses, so our skin will improve. You might loosen up some gunk in the throat. It might help improve hearing. And if there's mucus stuck in the sinuses, it will start to pull some of that out. Some of you might do this and notice all this mucus starts to come out through your mouth. For some, 20 minutes is way too long to start with. Remember to apply Kaizen, small continuous improvement. What is the smallest step you can take? Think about the low-hanging fruit first. You wouldn't climb to the top of the tree where there's fruit right there within arm's length. Work on the little practices until they become effective. So this might start as a 1 or 2 minute practice for the first month. Then you might surprise yourself and realise that 15 minutes has gone by one day. You might think to do this as a habit stacking practice. When I do my emails, I use that as a trigger to do my oil pulling. Another Kaizen is to start with a little bit of oil, maybe a teaspoon, and then gradually increase your quantity. After you spit the oil out, swish water through your mouth. Some find that this helps to whiten teeth, so even if we just do it for the vanity reasons, whatever the reason, just do it and notice the effects. The gums start to feel healthier, teeth stronger and whiter, and less sensitive to temperature. Now for nasal care. There's 2 things to talk about with the nostrils, the nasal rinsing and the nasal oiling. Just reflect on if you lean towards being dry in the nostrils or moist. Rinsing is where you use a neti pot. With warm salt water, you irrigate the nostrils and the sinuses. The water should taste like tears. That's how salty it should be. And it should be at body temperature warmth. The nose and chin are tilted towards the shoulder, and you allow gravity to feed water through and out. This is great to use as prevention of infections such as colds and flus, and this is my go-to as winter starts to move in. It's a natural immune system booster, as the nose, like all of the other senses, is bringing the outside to the inside. You want to take steps to minimise exposure to the cold and flu bugs. Also, it helps to keep the sinuses clear of dust and debris. So anyone working in those kind of environments, outdoors, construction or hay fever people, nasal irrigation is for you. Anyone living near the ocean or swimming in the water are already getting the effect of the neti. This is a great practice for kids to learn. Childhood is the cuffer stage of life, the snotty stage. Or for cuffers, it gets the snot out that you don't even know is sitting in the sinus passages. Otherwise, it attracts bacteria and viruses. You want to keep going until it's all out. You may need to do this as a regular practice every day that season, or until you're snot-free. If you do have a lot of mucus, this can be a sign to look at your diet. Take wheat out, take cheese out. See what happens with your mucus production. If you're a high vata, very dry, more fragile person, this might not be the best practice. Nasya would be better. So nasal oiling is simply a practice where we apply oil into the nostrils. Any oil you've got. The raw sesame that you have for massage or oil pulling, use that. You can add different essential oils to suit your constitutions if you like. You don't want to put an eyedropper up the nose due to contamination. So recline with your head tilted back and drop a few drops of oil from a height into your nose. A simple way of introducing this habit is to place a drop of oil on your pinky fingers and rubbing up inside the nostrils, and then do a little Miss Piggy act and snort it up a little higher. This is lubricating for the nostrils and the sinuses. The reason kids pick their crusty noses is that it needs more lubrication. So a few drops in the morning or at bedtime can help to balance the mind, the emotions, optimises your breathing, clears debris from the passages, strengthens immune system because the dried out nostrils are really great receptors for pathogens. But well lubricated nasal passages are an immune barrier to pathogens going deeper into the body. The little nasal hairs start to work better and catching stuff that you can then clear out with your nasya or your neti. There's Ayurvedic therapists who do a full nasya therapy, which can be very helpful for sinus infections. Vatas and pittas would probably need more nasya than neti. If stronger in kapha, you might need to add spicier essential oils to the oil, otherwise it might create more moisture. So for a Kaizen step, you can choose, are you going to do nasya or neti? Can you add that into your morning routine as a part of the start the day right habit? Pee, scrape your tongue, brush your teeth, neti or nasya. Or if you're in a dirty or dusty work environment, when you get home from work, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, wash your nose. A nice transition. Choose your trigger. Okay, so far we've covered the mouth and nose. Let's move on to eyes. Our eyes can get really tired. You might like to do this while you're listening. Start to roll your eyes in figure eights for 10 slow, easy breaths. Just like yoga asks us to stretch and move in ways that aren't normal for us. The same is true for this very simple eye care practice. You're increasing the flexibility of the eye muscles. Smile and relax at the same time will release tension around the eyes. Reverse the flow after 10, back the other way. So don't overdo it. If you feel strain, just back off. Some of you might find that this is really relaxing, simply in itself. Now we're going to do palming. Rub your hands together to generate heat. Place the right fingers over the left and gently press over your eyes, applying no pressure. Relax for 10 breaths. Notice the darkness and notice if your body starts to relax. You might yawn or release some deeper exhalation. Then you release your hands and simply notice if your body is a little bit more relaxed. So there's an eye therapy for the ones who want to go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, the Wonderlanders, where you wear goggles filled with ghee. So make sure it's the highest quality organic ghee. Melt it so that it's at body temperature and then fill your goggles. It's best to avoid this therapy if you had eye surgery. But otherwise, it's amazing. It allows the eyes to relax back. It's great for dry eyes or eye issues. And you can do this as often as you want. Or in a traditional way, in a clinic, with someone pouring ghee in. The Kaizen here would be to rub a little ghee in the corner of the eyes and blink a few times. The ghee will enter the eye. So if you're doing a lot of computer work or up-close work, horizon gazing is for you. Allow your eyes to rest as far as the eye can see. If you're in wide open spaces, allow your eyes to rest there. And if you're in an urban area, choose a building as far away as you can and look up to where the building meets the sky. You could even just look up towards the clouds. Allow your eyes to zone out. Take in the elements of nature straight from the elements. As you do, consciously release your eyeball into the back of the eye socket, just like when we were palming, how that created a backward movement and release. These little micro habits are what make a huge difference over time. For someone using the computer a lot, pulsate your work on the computer with just spacing out. After working for an hour, a buzzer goes off, move the body and look as far away as you can, so you're habit stacking. Do these things at the same time. There's a very simple therapy of putting oil into the ears. This is amazing at the seasonal junctures. Remember, the ears are ether, very light and extremely sensitive, and this is a deeply nourishing therapy. Like an earth therapy, it gives the ears a sense of grounding, decreasing sensitivity through the entire nervous system. It's a very subtle, sublime self-care practice to do. Ear oiling assists in treatment of insomnia, helps lessen noise in the ears, reduces headaches and dizziness, relieves symptoms of gum disease, reduces itchy and dryness in the ear. This practice can help prevent hearing loss in our wisdom years. So, sesame oil is heated to body temperature, an old towel under the head. Drop a half or a whole dropper into the inner ear cavity and lie there for a few minutes before draining onto the towel and rolling over. A quick Kaizen step would be a couple of drops on your pinkies and rub into the canals. This can be done during our self-massage. It starts to open up the cervical lymphatic system. For your kids, you might like to do this practice monthly and put half a drop into the ear. So again, we've covered a lot in this lesson on sense organ care: tongue scraping, oil pulling, the neti or the nasya, the eye practices and the oiling ears. Of course, we've already covered skin in the self-massage habit. It stands alone as its own habit because it's so important and a big habit. A lot of these other ones are really fast. Tongue scraping takes like 10 seconds. When you begin withdrawing the tongue chart, it will take longer, but the practice itself is super quick. The neti takes a minute. Putting a few drops of oil in your ears is only going to take about 20 seconds. And the eye care practices. about a minute a day. These are not a lot of work, it's just learning. So pick out what you want to do now, what you're capable of learning and integrating right now in your life. And what we're really looking for is triggering the habit so it's super easy to do. It's just a little small step that doesn't take any motivation. After I pee, I scrape my tongue. After I scrape, I wash my nose out. Before I go to bed, I put a few drops of oil in my ears. So remember, the habits are triggered by something, one of the 5 triggers or prompts. And with sense organ care, I would use a prior action or a specific time to trigger your new habits. Trigger an easy structured behaviour change. Do the super easy thing that is the smallest step, predetermined for the regular reality of low motivation. And tiny habits, the 1-minute meditation, baby steps for a long-term change. Make steady progress in the tiny habits, and the tiny habits grow naturally. Motivation is often low. Harness whatever motivation exists in the moment. So our growth work. Print off the blank tongue templates to complete daily. Choose a Kaizen step. Which sense will you nurture this week? And you might like to review the habit stacking and limiting beliefs if needed. So stop and write down which of these micro sense organ habits are the most important for you to start doing right now, and commit to doing it at least 3 weeks and review any differences you've noticed. And if you're stuck, start with the tongue scraping. Print off the map and pop it near your bathroom mirror. Start exploring the deeper body wisdom available for you right now. Remember, just experimenting. Choose to be underwhelmed. Let your inner body wisdom lead. Have fun.